Hey there, it's Sui again. How you been? Yeah, it's certainly has been a little bit, hasn't it? And by a little bit, I mean like 3 weeks, nearly approaching a month now. My bad, honestly. You know how it be. Sometimes you just really don't have the motivation to make certain videos on certain things, so naturally you're just like, damn, you know? But then I remembered, you know what? I really do enjoy God Eater, all of the games, so I figured why not make some videos on God Eater 3. So, it's nice to see you all again. I want to make more of these videos, so hopefully you enjoy them. And yeah, hi again. So let's go ahead and dive into today's video, and the others to come, of course. So yeah, let's get started. So, what I wanted to do for God Eater 3 videos, actually, was that I wanted to cover every weapon type in the game. I kind of wanted to cover how I use them, um, their general uses, as well as I wanted to, I guess, show my recommended burst darts to use for them. Although, of course, these are all just suggestions. You can use any weapon any way you want, and you can use any burst darts you want to use. That's the fun about games like these. You can choose whatever you want. But of course, these are just my general thoughts about the weapon, the uses, and again, these are just suggestions on burst darts you should probably use. Basically, I'm showing like, hey, this is what I use. It's pretty fun. And if you like it, you can use it. If you don't like it, then you could use whatever you want to like. So, Variant Scythe. Let's go ahead and dive into what is my favorite weapon type in the entire series. First, second, third, I've always loved the Variant Scythe. So let us go ahead and get started. So, if there's anything that I absolutely love about the Variant Scythe weapon type, is one, it's a scythe. I genuinely love scythes in pretty much any game. Scythes look cool, and you can't tell me otherwise. To be honest, that's probably the reason you picked this weapon up, and now you're here. Like, damn, how do I use the weapon? And honestly, I don't blame you. I play a game like this, I see Scythe, I pick. Why? Because Scythes are awesome. And also, they're really good in this game, So, as you now know, whether you're a long-playing player or you're a new player, there's your ground burst dart, jump burst dart, step burst dart. Of course, I will be going over each one that I recommend personally, but there's also, I kind of want to go over the general niche of Variant Scythe, and I'll equip an art for that. Hop into the training room. So if there's anything to note about Variant Scythe, it's got some nice length to it, of course you can use it for just close-up melee if you want, because scythes are really cool this way. But if there's anything worth noting about Variant Scythe, is the range. Now this is when you used the good old round slash, well, the extend bite, I recall it's called. Then you can do a vertical fang, and then a cleave fang. That's one of the many things to love about Variant Scythe, is that although, it looks like it has some modest range, it has a lot more range than what you would suspect. You can reach pretty darn far with this thing. That's one of my favorite things about it. You can have a lot of range with this weapon type. But yeah, that's pretty much the general use for it. Although yes, it looks cool, and it can be used for close-up melee if you want. But of course, the range is something to take into mind because of the special abilities it has. And also, it's got pretty cool aerial attacks as well. Steps as well. So that's mainly one thing that people use the Variant Scythe for, is the range. Which, of course, is a very valid reason to use the Variant Scythe. It's basically a handheld, well, a melee sniper rifle, basically, because this thing can reach very far. Which is nice, because you don't really have to close distance on some origami you're not too comfortable fighting. And that's perfectly fine. Any playstyle is pretty much fine. It's a PvE game after all, so who cares? Of course, there are many burst darts to support the ranged way. There's Nightmare Reaper, which is my personal favorite when it comes to the Cleave Fang. Pretty fancy. And of course there's Heaven or Hell, which I absolutely suck ass at using. It's really good, mind you. They both do similar damage, you know? Because if it was anything to know about burst arts is that, you know, they each cover a certain attack, you know? Like this is the ground attack, triangle ground attack, round fang, cleave fang, vertical fang. Each burst art for a weapon normally covers a different attack. So of course for the cleave fang you have Nightmare Reaper and Heaven or Hell. Heaven or Hell is really good because it pierces armor and does very solid damage. However, I suck ass at using it. Let me try and give an example here. Oh, I actually did it. You're just supposed to use it at like that little white flash, and I'll be honest with you, I'm bad at the timing, so I'll probably use Nightmare Reaper half the time, because it does increase damage to weak points, which is very, very nice. Either or are viable. Nightmare Reaper being definitely a more forgiving to use and does some nice damage, especially with increased damage to weak points. It's very nice. Of course, the other burst arts in stock. We've also got the aerial burst arts, Fanatic Scythe, Trinity Spin, and Dystopia. I've tried out each one, and I'm going to tell you, Dystopia is pretty much my favorite out of it. It's arguably probably the easier one to use, and it does bonus damage against down foes, meaning when they're knocked down. So, more damage with that, and it's also very spammable. Step burst arts. I've tried just about all of these. Personally, I'm going to stick with Bloody Claw. If you notice, absorbs HP on hit. That's the main reason why I use it, I'm going to be honest with you. Just a little bonus self-sustain to help me out. That's pretty much the main reason I use it for. Also, it's a very quick attack and has very good range. So with Variant Scythe, either if you want to play, you know, close-up, melee, you know, it's entirely your call. Or whether you want to stick to something more ranged, you know, you can too as well. The nice play styles for Variant Scythe. Either or is perfectly fine. And of course, there are different burst arts for different situations and different origami. Dystopia is pretty much an all-purpose aerial attack, but if you don't like how its hitbox is purely vertical, you can use Trinity Spin or Fanatic Scythe to deal with airborne origami. For ground, again, whether you want to use ground attacks, these are all your wonderful choices. Cleave Fang, or just my personal favorite, Round Fang, because it's just, again, it just brings it all around. And then of course there's the ground as well. Well, the basic ground spam, which is perfectly fine, really. And then we have the step attacks, which tried these two, didn't like them too much. I'm just going to stay with Bloody Claw because it's fast and is a nice way for self-sustain. So, if you pay attention so far, the main play styles for Variant Scythe, of course, you can go with the close-up melee. That pretty much applies to any weapon, really. Or you can use, of course, its extend bite attacks as well, Cleave Fang, Vertical Fang, or Round Fang, whichever you want to use. So yeah, close-up melee, and or you could use the immense amount of range the Variant Scythe offers to your advantage. Either or playstyle, like I've said, is you know, pretty much fine. That is your choice. So if you prefer those types of playstyles, then the Variant Scythe is for you. So now to go over my personally recommended burst arts. Soul Eater is very solid if you like being on ground and having self-sustain. Of course, if you don't want to bother with step attacks, something like that. Reaper's Call, because it's just, if you have an elemental scythe, this is pretty darn good. But all around, I would say my favorite burst art for Variant Scythe is Slaughterfang on the ground attack. Mostly just because it's simplistic, it has range, and does nice damage. But if there's anything that I love about Slaughterfang, right, is that because it has so much range, with so much vertical range, you can hit multiple parts in the process. So if you have a quadruped, you know, that you're facing up front, and they've got, you know, of course, their 4 legs, you can possibly break multiple parts with Slaughterfang. Because again, its length allows it to reach pretty far into the origami, making breaking multiple parts possible, well, doing damage to multiple parts possible. That's why I prefer it. Plus, you know, its range is incredibly high, so not to mention the solid amount of damage you get off of it. That's definitely my favorite ground burst art for Variant Scythe. As for the aerial for Variant Scythe, I'm going to use Dystopia. Because sure, the other ones are very nice for specifically doing aerial attacks, especially against certain origami like False Idol, yes. But I'm going to stay with Dystopia because it's just as good in any situation, I'm going to be honest with you. So let's go into the test range here. You'll notice that it's a straight... Yeah. And do keep in mind, this is good against ground origami, or if you're dealing with aerial, guess what? It's also good against them too. Dystopia is pretty much all-purpose for an aerial attack, and that's why I always prefer it. Not to mention it also does more damage against downed enemies, which means knocked down. So, for the aerial burst art for Variant Scythe, it's going to be all the way Dystopia for me. So how about the step burst start, Sui? Well, Bloody Claw. I've tried the other ones. I have not particularly liked them that much. Bloody Claw, though, I very much like. Because, again, it steals health on hit. Which may not be a lot of health, but I want you to keep in mind that you can spam it a lot. So if you're not getting hit while spamming it, you can get a nice amount of health back. And by spam it, I mean something like the lines of this, you know? This is what I mean. You can keep the spam on it very, very high. Not to mention, it does decent damage, and it steals health. That's why I'll always prefer Bloody Claw as my step burst start. With all that being said, these are my 3 favorite burst starts to run with Variant Scythe. Of course, I will use others from time to time, but if I had a loadout that was like, hey, this is what I'm going to use as my like general purpose loadout, these burst starts would be the way to go for me. As for the burst start effects, Blade Storm, Ignition, and Blade Storm again. This is pretty much the loadout I normally use when it comes to Variant Scythe. But of course, how you use this weapon is entirely up to you. Close-up melee, or you want to do something different. Maybe you want to do the ranged style with the extend bites. Your call. Because that's the fun part about it. You can do whatever you like. So that's pretty much going to wrap up my coverage of the Variant Scythe. Do let me know if my coverage on the Variant Scythe was good and or bad. I take any comments, whether they are good or whether they are constructive criticism. Any comments are welcome. So hopefully I've done a good job with showing you the fun that is the Variant Scythe in God Eater 3. Hopefully you try it out, have fun with it. Maybe you might end up maining the weapon like I do. It's my personal favorite and it always has been. And of course, if you have any related questions, leave them in the comments. I will happily reply. I do check my comments often, so any questions I will do my best to answer. So that's going to go ahead and bring today's video to a closing. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And yeah, of course, any comments or questions you have, I will be checking my comments frequently. And yes, this is only the first part of a series I'm going to be doing with this game, so stay tuned for any future God Eater 3 videos if you wish. So, thanks for watching. I do appreciate your time. I will be leaving my Discord link in the bottom of the description, of course. And yeah, my name is Sui, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.